Hey there everybody, it's markcrilley. I'm back with another how to draw video. Today we're going to be learning how to draw wings, or rather how to add wings onto a human character. Now what I've got here is a perfect square. People like to know the size, so I'm just going to tell you it's 3.5 inches on all sides, or that comes out to around 9 centimeters. But of course with a perfect square you can make it any size you want as long as it's the same size on all 4 sides. Now, in order to draw the wing, which I'm going to do one of the wings right here inside this square, I need a human character to attach it to. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a character of my own creation. I don't really intend for this video to be about how to draw this particular character. You know, I would encourage you to draw your own character, but I am going to put little breaks in to the time lapse for people who would like to follow along with some of the basic guidelines. So, enough of that. Let's go ahead and get into drawing this character. Okay, well, I think I have enough of the basic guidelines in place here, and I just thought I'd say part of my concept for this video was to make a character that looks a little bit like sort of a Greek goddess or something like that. I've never really tried doing a character that was from that time period or had that cultural aspect to it. So that's kind of what we're heading toward here. But I want to move on to the real focus of this video, which is, of course, the wings. Now, notice that I've drawn this character in such a way that the upper area of her back connects with the middle of the square, right? So where the wings are going to come out is right around the middle of that 3.5 inch line that I initially drew. And so that's going to become pretty important as we try to get these wings in the right place. Well, I'm going to go ahead and begin with hopefully a pretty simple guideline to get us started. Okay, so hopefully the square can help you in placing this line. It begins up here in this one corner, kind of curving just a little. It'll eventually curve all the way around. But what you want to do is get this line sort of diagonally curving down until it crosses right around the 1/3 from the bottom, versus 2/3 from the top. And so you're getting just a little bit of a curve there and have it cross past that line, and that'll get you this sort of upper edge of one of the wings. Well, let's go ahead and add the next guideline. All right, now this line is a little unusual in that we're not actually going to be following this line in the end. It's going to help us see the length of each one of the feathers so that they sort of line up, so the tips will all line up eventually. But notice how much of a curve it is. Notice where the curve touches the square, and sort of paying attention to this little sliver of a triangle may help you in getting the placement there. Now, the next thing we want to draw is a pretty important line that roughly follows parallel with that first line. Let's go ahead and get that in place. Alright, so as you can see, it is sort of roughly parallel, maybe beginning to head in a slightly different direction, so it would be wider at the base and sort of narrowing. But it's not going to go all the way up like that. We're going to have a secondary section that sort of cuts across here to attach to the back. So let's go ahead and get that line where it needs to be. Alright, so I decided to go ahead and get this line in as well. But first let's talk about this line down here. It has a little bit of an S curve, and different wings are going to have different shapes. So certainly you can tweak this according to what type of wing you want to draw. But anyway, some of the wings that I studied had this secondary section like that, and then curving down here, you have a pretty substantial curve to this part of the wing. I suppose the wings themselves, in a way, should be in place of the arms, which is sort of interesting. A human character with wings hypothetically should have no arms. So you really are in the realm of fantasy here. But that sort of bend there would probably be sort of like the elbow heading up to the hand. here if we were drawing an actual bird's wing. So let's go ahead now and get the final guidelines in place, and then we can knock it off with all the time-lapse. Get old man time-lapse out of here. And switch on to drawing the feathers. But I do want to get a couple of guidelines in here, because what I've found in studying, both actual bird wings and then sort of illustrations of fantasy characters is very often this mass of feathers divides into 3 sections. My beloved subsections. Everyone knows that I love to have subsections, and so there's going to be 3 different subsections. I got to get the lines in the right place, and then we can, get into some real-time drawing. All right, folks, well, we have some unusual circumstances in this video. Everything that you have seen up until now was actually shot on a different day. And what I realized is there was a pretty major mistake in this video. After I did the time-lapse version and put it onto YouTube, I began to see comments in the comment section, people saying, you got the upper surface of the wings rather than the underside of the wings. And sure enough, after looking into it, I realized, oh my goodness, they're right. I have got the wrong side of the wings showing here. So what I've gone and done, I've gone back and sort of painstakingly reconstructed this character at the point where I started to go wrong. And we're going to try to fix this error before I post the narrated version. So my apologies to those of you who watched that earlier version, the time-lapse version. It was indeed showing a pretty major error there. So I'm going to go in now and try to atone for my sins and try to make this at least a little more close to what you ought to see in the underside of a bird's wing. So I'm going in here, I'm making a large section here near the top, maybe a little different from the earlier version of the video. One thing that I noticed as I began to study a little more carefully the actual bird anatomy is that the secondary section here is quite narrow compared to some of these later long feathers. So that's one thing that was maybe just an error in general, apart from this upper surface, lower surface thing. But otherwise, now maybe we can get into dividing this into the large, long feathers that no doubt are the most important ones in terms of flight, carrying the character up in the air. And so I'm doing a line here that divides it in half to begin with. And then what I want to do is divide each one of these remaining areas into thirds. I always find that it's easiest when you have to divide something up to first divide it in half. It can be easier to do that. Now, one of the major things that was really wrong about the earlier version of this video was the way in which the feathers overlap. And I had drawn them overlapping in the wrong direction because I was drawing the upper surface. Now, in my defense, I want to sort of explain how it was that I ended up making that mistake. I was looking at photos of bird feathers, but I also was looking at illustrations and different types of reference, and one of the things that I looked at was a ceramic sculpture that I thought the wings looked really nice on. But indeed, the person who did that sculpture had made this mistake of getting the feathers overlapping in the wrong direction. And so, yeah, I ended up sort of incorporating that person's mistake into my video. So, my apologies. As you see here, the outer feathers are the ones that overlap the inner feathers when you're looking on the inside of a wing. So that is the major thing that I'm trying to correct here, because I had in the earlier version the inner feathers overlapping over the outer feathers. That is something you only see when you're looking at the upper surface of the wing. Now, in addition to getting that overlapping part of it right, you of course want to get the sort of shape of each of the tips of the feathers right. What I find is that it comes to a bit of a point, but they don't look like little swords or anything. There's a sort of a curve to them, and I'm basically just not making them come to a super sharp point, maybe a slightly dulled point. To me, that looks a little more feathery. And as we come down here, I think I'm going to sort of taper this a little bit. Make this one a little smaller as it comes up into this other section here. Now, this is where, again, looking at that original source of reference, I had really quite short feathers. I think what I'm going to do this time, since I have the opportunity to sort of reimagine this feather surface, I'm going to have these feathers extend quite a bit past that initial guideline, which was something that was sort of bothering me a little. Now, the other thing when you're drawing these feathers is that they are sort of fanning out, and the direction that this feather is pointing in is going to be, little by little the direction changes as you get closer to the body, and so you eventually end up with feathers over here that are pointing at quite a different angle. And, now that I've made this error in the earlier version of the video, I'm starting to get a little concerned that every aspect of this video is not entirely accurate in terms of an actual bird's wing. But of course, we are not drawing a bird's wing, we're drawing a sort of a fantasy character's wing. So maybe I can let myself off the hook in terms of if any remaining aspects of this illustration are not absolutely perfect in that regard. But I find that it's appealing to have sort of two different lengths down here at the edge. It creates an interesting contour. Not all birds' wings do this. In fact, it may be somewhat unusual, but I do like that, the shape that's created rather than just having a single straight line of feathers. Now, when we come up to the second section, this again sort of divides into two subsections of feathers. These ones are going to be noticeably smaller, but again, you have to maintain that idea of the one feather overlapping the other, and so, basically you want to start on the outside, it seems to me, if you're drawing this side of the underside of the wings. You want to start with your feathers up here. That way it's easy to draw the next one overlapped, like so. And then coming down to here, I begin to create a second sort of curving section of feathers, but again, sort of taking care to maintain the direction of each feather pointing in a slightly different direction, so as you get closer and closer down toward her back, they are pointing down a little more vertically rather than up. And then one thing that I noticed as I, again, sort of renewed my studies prior to trying to fix this video, is that this, when you're on the upper area here, the feathers become much less distinct in this whole area here, and more sort of fluffy. So when I get up here, I'm not going to be doing so much of the very careful layering and so forth, maybe a little down here towards the edge, but I'm going to get this just a little more random looking in terms of how I place these feather lines. I guess down here along this edge is the one area where I will maintain that pattern a little bit. But yeah, doing this video has taught me, whenever I'm doing one of these lessons, maybe I need to give myself a few more days of study before I commit to the final video to make sure that I'm not spreading misinformation. I do feel sort of bad about that earlier version, and sadly I think I am going to have to shut it down and maybe replace it at some point with a newly edited time-lapse version. And so that brings us maybe to the end of the illustration here of the wing. And again, different people are going to have different preferences in terms of the size and shape of the wing. A lot of people, they get very interested in the realism of a wing being large enough to lift a character into the air, in which case this version is still, the wings would be way too small. And if you start sort of researching how large would they need to be, in a hypothetical situation of lifting a human off the air, you begin to find lots of different answers, most of them agreeing that the wings would have to be absolutely huge in order to lift a human being off the ground. And I pretty quickly decided not to, you know. She would head to toe maybe like that high in order for these wings to be large enough to lift her off the air or off the ground into the air. And so I decided, yeah, these are fantasy wings. I'm not going to concern myself too much with the scientific reality there. But anyway, now it is time to draw this other wing, and what's going to happen is it's going to end up being much more compressed from side to side because it's pointing off in a different direction. I've spent so much time doing this real time, I think what I'll do is just do the rest of this other wing in time lapse. So let me go ahead and take care of that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so as you can see, I basically, having established the anatomy of the one wing, I repeat it on the other side, again, just sort of compressing it from side to side so that it will look like it's pointing off in a different direction from the first. Now, one thing that some people who really get into the idea of humans with bird wings will be paying attention to is this idea that, a wing is sort of like an arm. For a bird, it really is their arm, and that that arm would be coming up like this, inside here, the skeletal structure that allows this to be able to flap up and down and so forth. And then you'd sort of imagine fingers coming down like so, supporting the rest of the wing. So what that probably means, for people who want to get into this, is you may get some shading in here that sort of suggests the added width or mass in this area that would be supporting that has the skeletal structure underneath it. Again, not everybody wants to go for this sort of highly realistic looking wing, so I would sort of leave that to you. If you want to get some suggestions of skeletal structure underneath the wing, go ahead and do that. But, it's your drawing, it's your sort of fantasy character that you're creating. No need to include anything in it that you don't want to. But happily, I think we do have something that is, not spreading too much misinformation into the world about the wings, how they look from the underside. Certainly, this idea of the which feathers are overlapping the others. Once I noticed that mistake, that was when I really thought, oh my goodness, I can't send this out into the world with the feathers overlapping in the wrong direction. That just struck me as too much misinformation to send out into the world of people who are learning how to draw wings. In any case, it is now time for me to move on to doing some of the final line work for this character's hair and costuming. Unfortunately, I can't make this video so much about that. It's really more about the wings. So I'm going to do all of this in time lapse. But if those of you who like the look of this character and want a separate lesson that would focus exclusively on how to draw her, by all means leave your suggestions in the comment section, and maybe I'll be able to do such a video in the future. But let's go ahead and in time lapse, I'm going to not only just finish off this costume, but I'm going to pull out the trusty black Prismacolor, and I'm going to go and finish up all of the line work, and then maybe be able to say a word or two before I get into the shading. Okay, so that kind of takes care of the line work. I am going to be adding shading, maybe a little more detail throughout the piece. But before I did that, I wanted to say a word or two about the costuming. I guess one thing you got to keep in mind when you are designing a human character with bird-like wings is that the clothing needs to make space for those wings, right? So I've given her like a halter top here where the cloth goes around here, leaving the back open, in terms of where the clothing is, so that you have space for the wings. So that's something you definitely have to sort of keep an eye on when you're designing a character like this. But otherwise, what I might do, since I have this sort of rare opportunity to redo this video, is I might add a little more texture to the feathers themselves, which I didn't do in the earlier version of the video. I will be doing that as I generally do with my Dixon Ticonderoga, adding shading throughout the piece, and then we'll be back with a few final words. Alright, well there's my video on how to draw wings. Actually, it felt like I did 2 videos this week. Because in a way I did, owing to my earlier mistake. My apologies to people who watched the earlier version of this video that had the mistake with the feathers being on the wrong side. But otherwise, let me know what you thought of this video. I can certainly do more such videos on wings, or indeed on this type of sort of Greek goddess type of character in the future. But for now, let me go ahead and thank anyone who has supported me by getting any of my books, Smeaky Falls or Brody's Ghost, the graphic novel series, as well as Mastering Manga and Mastering Manga 2. Honestly, do greatly appreciate those of you who support me by getting those books. But of course, this video cannot be done until I add the blushes, which I did do in the earlier version of the video, but now I'm getting to do them again. And that means, finally, that I can lay down this pencil. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back with another one real soon.